Once again, greetings from Cooperstown, New York, side of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. We're very glad our fans and followers could join us today for another installment of Virtual Voices of the Game. We will be talking Strat-O-Matic baseball with two guys who know that subject better than anybody. Hal Richman, the founder of Strat-O-Matic, and Adam Richman, who is currently the CEO of the company. We will talk all things Strat-O-Matic momentarily. Before we get started, though, we do like to thank the Ford Motor Company for their generous support of this and all of our other virtual programs, Virtual Voices of the Game, Virtual Legends, Author Series, all sorts of programs that we do. We're able to do them free of charge, largely because of the generosity of the Ford Motor Company. So thanks to Ford Motor. And our thanks go out to today's guests, Hal and Adam Richman, talking about Strat-O-Matic baseball. This is the 60th anniversary of the company. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Hey, Bruce, it's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Our pleasure.
Hal, I want to begin with you. Hal, by the way, is on the right side. Unfortunately, his arm is in a sling. I'm told it's a minor injury. If you're a right-hander, Hal, you'd be able to pitch today, right?
Unfortunately, I'm a left-hander.
Oh, you are a left-hander.
Yeah.
All right, but you're still able to
do
speak.
things right-handed,
Yeah,
which worked against me as an athlete, particularly
Right.
basketball. I used to be able to dribble well with my right hand, but not my left. But I did all my shooting with the left.
I
And
see.
there was a lot
Okay.
of problems when I drove. Most of my shots were blocked because of that.
Well, we're glad that you're feeling well enough to be with us today. I want to begin with you. In 1961, you're a student at a college, Bucknell University, and you come up with this idea for this mathematically based baseball game. How did it all begin?
Well, it actually began when I was 11. I loved athletics, but I wasn't a great athlete by any means. I never did make a varsity sports team at all in high school. And of course, I was a statistician at Bucknell University for the football and basketball teams. So it came about basically because my father was at a book fair, and a man was there by the name of, he was a writer who wrote a book about baseball. And he basically wrote a little message in the book saying, knowing the book was coming to me, and saying basically, Hal, be a good boy and you'll be a baseball major leaguer someday yourself. And the book was about all the players in the Hall of Fame. This is 1945. And I was totally overwhelmed by it. Perhaps before that point, I was more into astronomy, but once I got that book, it was baseball. And to read about Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, Roger Hornsby, and all those great players of the past just was overwhelming to me. And so at the age of 11, I was going to a camp for that summer, and I developed a crude version of Strat-O-Matic baseball to play with my camper friends. And that's how it all began. And the game and other games were developed by me over my teenage years. And then when I went to college, it was pretty much on hold, except for the summers where I would work on the baseball game. And then in 1958, I graduated from college. And my mother, who was in the real estate business, knew a man who was in the toy business. And she made an appointment for me to meet him. And I did, and I brought all my products over. They were represented by football, basketball, baseball, and also some non-sports games. And the man looked over my work, and he said, "You know, young man, you have a talent, but it's not commercial." And this was after about 3 hours of discussion. At that point, was a bit upset, but at the same token, I knew this man knew what he was talking about. When I came home that night, I was in the kitchen at the breakfast table, and I started rolling dice. And all of a sudden, it occurred to me what I would do to make the game more commercial. And that was the beginning of the 3 dice method, in which the white die is read separate from the colored dice. And after that, it was a matter of taking that theme to all the games and basically building around it. And eventually, when I was When I was about 25 years old, no one wanted my products. I actually went into business for myself, and the rest is history.
So you come up with the idea at the age of 11, which is just remarkable. And then in 61, it I guess first hits the market in a very limited way, doesn't make money for you. You're probably losing money those early years, but at least it's out there.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely losing money. The first 2 years, I was able to raise 3,005. These numbers are a lot different than today's numbers.
Yeah.
I was able to raise $3,500 from 3 of my friends I borrowed the money from. And I barely was able to pay them back by the end of the year. And this is repeated the second year also. It was the third year that I finally found out what had to be done to make the game more public, more people to play it, more people to come in contact with it.
Yeah.
And that's when things started to move. And in the third year, when we came out with a full set of cards.
And how did you come up with the name Strat-O-Matic, which is a wonderful name?
Well, that's an interesting story. I was shoveling snow in my father's house in the garage, and I just come from I was looking for a name for the company. I was in the dictionary, and there was a word called Statistical. And I went outside to shovel the snow, and it all of a sudden hit me, Strat-O-Matic from Strategical. And that's how the name came about. And a few years later, I would look for that word again, Strategical, but it was, I guess, eliminated from the dictionary. Wasn't used too often. And so Strat-O-Matic, the parent of that, so to speak, Strategical disappeared, but Strat-O-Matic remains.
I seem to remember a product from years gone by called Veg-O-Matic. Remember that?
No, I don't. Vegemat? No.
Veg-O-Matic.
Veg-O-Matic.
Yeah.
There were a lot of Matics.
Yeah. Okay.
A few. That was a big thing in those days, but they're not too many now. But
right.
We're still there.
Now, Hal, when you first started producing cards of these Major League players, did you have to get any permission from Major League Baseball for rights to use their names?
Well, at that point in 1961, the Major League players were not organized. They would eventually become organized, I say at approximate date, 1965 or 1966, when a man named Marvin Miller became the representative for them. And when he came in, at that point, no one was paying royalties. And he came in and he devised a whole new way of bringing funds into the Players Association in many different ways. One of them was through games. Mm-hmm. And he was told about Strat-O-Matic by the Atlanta Braves because the entire team was playing Strat-O-Matic at that point. Wow. And so Strat-O-Matic was a target. It was one of the 2 top targets. They thought we were a very large company in 1965. And the other company was Topps. And they were right about Topps, but not about Strat-O-Matic. We were very, very small. And they contacted us, and I was a bit shook up. And I had a very close friend of mine who was a lawyer, and he and I went down to see Marvin Miller. And my friend, Bob Sale, his name was, told Mr. Miller our sales figures. And Marvin Miller is a very calm man, or was a very calm man. And he bounced his pencil right off his desk, went high into the air, and he said to Bob Sale, Mr. Sale, I thought your sales are going to be our royalty figures. I don't know what I'm going to do with you guys. And so for a day or two there, we were really shook up. I remember, we went to a meeting. There was some, I forget who the baseball representative was from the team, but he was there. I spoke to him. And then Miller finally said, we're going to let you live. And all the other companies were hoping that some of the companies will develop into some size and be able to create royalties for us of significance. And that's how it began. And we then started paying royalties around 1965, 66, and thereafter. And then football came in, and hockey also, we paid royalties to those companies. We did not pay basketball. They did not come after us.
Really? Adam, let's ask you about how you got started. You came onto the scene a little bit later on, but talk about your entrance into the world of Strat-O-Matic.
Sure. Well, Bruce, first of all, thank you so much for having us today. It's great to be here. Our partnership with the Hall of Fame is long and so meaningful to us. And it's just been a terrific collaboration with you and your colleagues and in so many areas, in licensing and research. And we're really thrilled to be here today and to continue this great relationship together. So thank you for having us. So my involvement in Strat-O-Matic, it's our family business. So some people have family businesses that are more standard, are maybe the law or much more standard businesses, but ours is Strat-O-Matic. And my sister and I were raised in a house where we were taught that if you're passionate about something, follow your passion and play it out and make it happen. So we were raised with that ethos. And for me, I've always been interested in products that really have to do with the cultural conversation. And Strat-O-Matic is absolutely a product that's a big part of the cultural conversation. And so, I've been involved for a while now, really have changed the focus of the company and sort of what we do. I mean, the company is, as you know, Bruce, being a longtime fan, really started as a research institute. And our brand, more than anything, is about statistical accuracy and reliability. And we have an amazing team of researchers at Strat-O-Matic that every year create the perfect data sets for baseball, football, basketball, and hockey. And that data is expressed in different ways, in card form for the board games and in digital data files for our digital games on various platforms. And, we really, the games are the bread and butter of our company. And really, a few years ago, we started to look at the company and all the intellectual property that we have in the library. And not only just moving, for us, it wasn't just about moving everything to digital, but it was also looking at the market and where the market was heading, and also really looking at the vast amount of intellectual property and research we have, and figuring out different ways to use it. And really, what's happened, a lot of it has happened since COVID has started. But trying to take our intellectual property and use it to both simulate prospectively and retrospectively sporting events that, in the case of prospective, haven't happened, and then also celebrating sporting events that have happened by simulating retrospective events. So, a big part of what we do now, and sort of the place where the company has moved, we really sort of see ourselves much more as a content company now, in the media space, where a lot of what we're doing, in addition to publishing all of our games, is also simulating content for different media partners and working with them to support current sporting events, but also looking back at history and simulating previous sporting events in all four of these amazing sports that we are involved with.
Adam, has this been your only job since you've moved into adulthood, or did you have jobs in other areas before that?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate in that as I mentioned, I'm involved in things that are interesting to me in the cultural conversation and products that contribute to the cultural conversation. So I also, in addition to running Strat, I also work in the film and television business, and have made quite a few features and work in the television space as well. So I'm very lucky that I get to spend my days doing things that I love, and as my father really has set the tone for my whole life, really creating products that people can enjoy and hopefully make the world a little bit better. I think one of the things we saw at Strat-O-Matic with the start of COVID was obviously MLB wasn't playing. There was no live sports. So, what we did right away was simulate the MLB season in 2020 as it was supposed to have been played, and played each game as it was supposed to have been played. And those games were reported on, our simulations were reported on by media outlets all over the country, and in some cases internationally, in a way that was providing that need of the country to celebrate and come together for their love of baseball. And I think that was sort of an amazing moment for the company last year when we realized, okay, with all of this pain and all of this suffering that's going on right now, we could bring a little bit of joy and a little bit of connection between generations by bringing people back to the sport that they love and simulating what should have happened.
Yeah. We have up on the screen a picture of Hal from a few years back. This is his office at Strat-O-Matic in Glen Head, New York, downstate New York. Looks like a fun place, Hal, this office of yours. You like to hang out there, huh?
Yeah. Well, it was a bit untidy, I guess, but it worked for me. And it was a nice, decent sized room, and I did a lot of my creating there. I must say, pretty much a loner when it came to creating. I never really worked with other people, only by myself. And then I would test the products with the people at Strat-O-Matic, and then we would find some problems, and we'd then work on them and retest it again. And that's how these products were developed, through a lot of playing a lot. Because the idea was not only to create something that was very realistic, but also had play value. If you just have one or the other, you will not have a successful product. You have to have both play value, something fun to play, and also something realistic. And I was fortunately able to achieve that, particularly with the baseball game, that combination. And there you see the layout of cards and all. And I don't know what those cards read, but we do stress old timer seasons a lot in baseball. And I must say, I always enjoyed working on old timer seasons. What I would do is, of course, to get a flavor of the season, I would read the newspaper, the sporting news for that year, read it from the beginning in January right through December. And it would give me a flavor of the players and what was going on. And I always found that very interesting, very enjoyable for me to do. And then I would be able to create more realistically many of the ratings of the players, because much of the writings did entail descriptions of players' abilities and statements about them. In those days, writers were more willing to say things about players that were not so positive. Today, it's mostly positive stuff, but then it was a lot of negative stuff at times when it was necessary to say that. I remember when the St. Louis Cardinals had Roger Hornsby, a young Roger Hornsby playing second base for them in his first year. The writer was so upset with the infield. He said, other than Hornsby, none of them belong in the majors defensively. And, you would see things like this. And then there was once an article on outfielders. I'll never forget it. The man really knew his stuff. And he gave about 20 different reasons of why a man should be considered what made a man a good outfielder. And he rated the outfielders all defensively for the first, from 1890 to 1920. I'll never forget that. And Ty Cobb, who everyone talks about as hitting, was also an excellent fielder. And when he wrote up Ty Cobb, he said, I know you're not going to like this, but he was perhaps the second best outfielder of all time defensively after Speaker. And, that's the kind of writing you got then. So you got more in insight with the reading in those days. And today, though, of course, you have a lot of statistics, which is very helpful also. And you use different statistical services or rating systems, and you combine them all and you come up with a rating. And we also speak to people who watch these games and what they think of them. And we still read, and to get those ratings. And the ratings are very important. No one spends the time on ratings like Strat-O-Matic.
Hal, take us back to 1961, the very first commercial version of the game. Was it very different from the game today or pretty similar?
It was like the basic game. It was the basic game, a little more basic actually. It was a product that was just singular in nature. We only had the first year we created 80 all-stars, and the feeling was you got to the feedback to us. You got to have more players. That was one of the things. I also was very fortunate. I had a friend who was in the advertising business, and he was able to work out a deal with Sports Illustrated where we would get the entire country, all the circulation of Sports Illustrated for the price of just the East. And I said, oh, we're going to do very well right away. We're going to get off to a tremendous start in business. Well, we paid $400 for the ad, and the game sold for $4 in those days. We got 25 responses. So we took a beating. And then went back to my friend. He said, now we're going to, and my friend said to me, well, I'm going to put you in with someone who really knows the mail order business. And he did. Two brothers, I forget their names now, Bruce and I forget the other man's name, but they basically helped me get started in reaching people. And that was very important. We eventually created a brochure, which was very important in getting people to buy the game. We really couldn't sell off the ad alone. It was impossible because people wanted to know more about it. And of course, the number of players was another problem. And that by 1963, we had a full set of 20 players only per team. Now we have, well, a minimum of 27 on a team. I think we get additional players, but then there were already 20 players on a team, 16 teams, 320 players. And that went a long way in the popularity of Strat-O-Matic. And of course, we were now advertising it correctly. And we were doing a lot of magazine advertising, all the sports magazines. We were also in comic books eventually, and he went into Boy's Life. We did quite a bit in those days in print. We really did. This is all before the internet, obviously, and it's changed completely. We do no print now at all, other than advertise sales and things like that. But that's even done on the internet, and it's almost all on the internet now. Our whole basis of selling.
You mentioned the basic version of the game, which is what you really emphasized at the start. So here we have the Babe Ruth card, and on one side is the basic version. On the other side is the advanced version, and that gets into platoon splits and things like that. For those who aren't familiar with the game, as Hal mentioned earlier, it is a dice game. You have 3 dice. There's a colored die, and then there's the 2 regular white die. So the colored die will give you either a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. If you come up with a 1, 2, or 3, you play off the hitter's card, like we see with this Babe Ruth card here. And then the 2 white die, you combine that number, and let's say it's 12. Let's say you roll 2 with the colored die, and then a combination 12 with a white die. So you would go to column 2, you'd go down to 12, that's a walk, so Babe Ruth's on first base. Now, if you throw the die and the colored die comes up 4, 5, 6, now you're playing off the pitcher's card as opposed to the hitter's card. So that way it's a kind of a mix. It's a mix. Sometimes you're playing the hitter's card, sometimes you're playing the pitcher's card, but that way there's a balance, both pitchers and hitters, and that's the essence of the game, pitcher versus hitter, that confrontation. So both have a determination. You mentioned before, Hal, about the ratings, the defensive ratings for the players. And Adam, feel free to jump in on this. But here we see Babe Ruth, right fielder 2, left fielder 2, center fielder 4. The best defensive rating is a 1. 2 is pretty good. 3, I guess, is about average. 4, not very good. So in determining these 2s and these 4s on these outfield ratings, are you looking at statistics, baseball reference? Are you going on historical reports, old articles, research you've done? How exactly are you pinning down these ratings, these numbers?
So let me answer that. So, there's a secret sauce at Strat-O-Matic that we cannot discuss, but we have proprietary algorithms and utilities that have been developed over the last 60 decades, which includes, like anyone in the fantasy business, you can get a standard data feed of box scores and other basic information. We get that. And then that's just where we start. We spend, that's where the thousands of hours with our research group is layered on top of that, which includes extensive quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis, and the use of these proprietary algorithms, utilities, and formulas that are exclusive to Strat-O-Matic. And I'll tell you, Bruce, something really great, something that we're really proud of. So we just obviously the season just ended and Atlanta won. In April, we predicted 7 out of the 10 using our sim and all of our algorithms, 7 out of the 10 final teams that would advance, and the winner that we picked, Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
Which is really amazing.
It's
really amazing. But getting back to your question, how we do it. So we have different, we look at stats, we do reading, as I mentioned before, we have stats, we have opinions from people, and we gather all this information together, and we come up with about 6 or 7 ratings. And it's really just like if you watch a diving competition where there'll be 5 judges, and they'll throw out the ones that are outliers and use the one and give the man a rating on the dive, which is typical what remains. And that's what we do. So we have these 6 or 7 ratings, and we throw out the outliers, and then what's remaining, that's what we use for a rating. And that's how we do it. It has become, statistics are important, but as we know, sometimes, and we have different sets of statistics, because one set will never do it. But we also have the readings, and we also have the interviews with people who watch them.
And also the 60 years of expertise, which no one can touch.
Yeah.
Now, some of the other ratings that we see here, there's a letter system for base stealing prowess. Actually, in the advanced game, AAA is the best. There's AA, there's single A, and then I guess you go B, C, D is the worst. It's been a while since I've played, so D is the worst, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so Babe Ruth, in terms of his base stealing, was not that great in 1924. He was only a D, so he was probably caught stealing a few times. But his running number is actually quite good. It says here running 1 to 15. And I guess what's the best running number is what, 1 to 19?
Well, that's with 2 outs. Yes, 17 is the best number you have on the card.
Okay.
2 outs you add on to would be 1 to 19. But yes, the running rating, and there are many players. I mean, Joe DiMaggio was a great example, great base runner, but he never stole many bases. Mm-hmm. So the base stealing is based on the stolen bases, times thrown out, plus we also, one very important thing about this is we normalize all our statistics. So what I mean by that is that, there was a year, 1930, I think it was, or 31, I'm not sure now anymore, when the National League was looked as a second league, that the American League was just beating them in the World Series, and they had Ruth and Gehrig and Cobb, and so the National League, in an effort to overcome this advantage, did some things with the ball, and the averages for 1930, I think it was 30, for the National League was 303. That was the batting average. In other words, if you hit 300, you really were just an average hitter. Today, if you hit 300, you are a very good hitter.
Yeah,
as far as averages go. So that was a situation, and so what we do is we in other words, we look at the statistics for each season, and we normalize them. So we know that a 303 hitter is really just an average hitter in 1930, but in 2021, he's an excellent average hitter.
And I think just to add to that, I think that sort of speaks to the entire Strat-O-Matic universe and the success of it, because the beauty of the Strat-O-Matic universe is that you can take that player from the 1927 Yanks and the 2019 Yanks or Sox or whoever, and put them together, and they all work seamlessly in the whole Strat-O-Matic universe, and that's on a per sport basis.
Yeah. We also did the Negro Leagues.
Yeah.
And that was a very difficult thing to do. We worked on it for a couple of years, and I worked with a gentleman who was a follower of the Negro Leagues. There were many people in the country, I shouldn't say many, but there was a group of people in the country that used to collect Negro League box scores. And they were all pro Negro League and very upset at the fact that the players could not play in the major leagues, and rightfully so. So this fellow had about 10,000 box scores, and he was a Strat-O-Matic player. And I basically got together with him and I said, Scott, I want you to go through the box scores. We're going to use these players. I want you to break it down for me, lefty, righty, and everything. And then we'll talk about ratings also. And so we worked very hard on that. And we eventually came up, I must say we did a very good job based on the fact that we received almost no criticism on it. People accepted what we did as the real thing. And
we're so proud of this product. I mean, Strat-O-Matic has been used for decades now in schools to teach kids about math and probability. But the great thing about the Negro Leagues product, and I know my father feels this way as well, is that it also teaches kids about the history of the civil rights movement, and it brings it to life. And it's, and I know that, and we've talked about this, Bruce, about, that you often use our games at the museum, teaching kids about baseball and about different parts of baseball history. And I think, the work we've done on the Negro Leagues, it's so meaningful to us for that reason, to the connection to the civil rights movement. And, I think it's wonderful to see the Negro Leagues getting all of this amazing press right now that it is getting. And it's a product we're incredibly proud of.
Yeah. I mean,
when did you start to produce the Negro Leagues cards?
What was that question?
When did you begin to produce the Negro Leagues cards for the first time?
I think around 2011.
Yeah, it was about 10 years ago.
Yeah, about 10 years ago. And
now with some of the recent advancements, so we've had people on from Baseball Reference and some other websites that are particularly tuned into the Negro Leagues, we're seeing a more comprehensive analysis, summary of statistics. We're getting a more complete picture. Is that going to result in you maybe updating some of those Negro Leagues cards?
So, we actually have been creating specific seasons of we started with an all-star product, Negro Leagues All-Stars, and now we're creating specific seasons. So we are constantly updating our Negro Leagues library at Strat-O-Matic, and can plan to continue to do so without question.
Very good. We talked about the basic version. Now we have the advanced version, and this becomes a lot more realistic. This was the form of the game that I loved to play back in the 1980s, because now you have breakdowns against left-hand pitching and you have breakdowns against right-hand pitching. And for most hitters, if you're a left-hand hitter, you're going to do better against righties. Right-hand hitters will do better against lefties, although we see on Babe Ruth's card, pretty darn good against both lefties and righties. I see lots of walks, lots of home runs. One of the things that I always found interesting about these cards, and again, you have to forgive me, it's been a while since I've played, but you'll notice some of the outcomes, like look 311 against left-hand pitchers. It says fly ball right field, B ? Refresh my memory on what the question mark is all about.
Okay, I'm going to have to pull a blank on this one. I should know that, obviously.
Okay.
You were the one who put the question mark on it, but that was done in 1971, and I don't quite remember what that question mark is. I'm going to have to look that up after this program is over. I feel a little embarrassed about that.
We will email you, Bruce.
Yes.
Okay.
We will get you the answer that maybe you can post on your site so everyone sees it.
Okay, somebody has chimed in on the chat. Joseph says it's a possibility of a sacrifice fly or not. That was a guess, I guess. The other one is possible tag at the plate. So we'll try to pin down exactly what that answer is. It just jumped out at me when I saw those question marks again after a long period of time. At what point, Hal, did you come up with the idea for this advanced version? Now there's a super advanced as well, which gets even more comprehensive. But tell us about the advanced version when you came up with that notion.
The question mark is from the super advanced version.
Oh, it is.
Yes, the super advanced version and the advanced version are on the same side of the card.
Okay.
That's where that question mark comes from, and the game, the advanced game, it came about because people wanted more. And at the time, I was doing the basic game manually. In other words, I was doing all the cards by myself, not with the help of a computer. So when we finally realized we had to have a lefty, we had the lefty-righty statistics were starting to come out then through AP, and I would see them. I would go to occasionally I would go to Elias Bureau in New York City, and I would see what they were getting lefty-righty stats, and I knew full well that this was going to be very important. And then there was a game out there that actually did use them. So I started working on that, but I also knew I could not. It would be impossible for me. It would be like doing 3 sets of cards, because the left side is one set, is really like a set of card by itself, and the right side is a card by itself, and then you have the basic game. It would have been impossible. So we had to have it computerized once we got the data, and we got the data from the AP. But I had to find a programmer who would be able to program Strat-O-Matic and have the game done by computers rather than by hand. Yeah. And it took us quite a while to get somebody. And I'll never forget it. The computers in those days were huge machines. It would take up an entire large space, which and did not have the power of a PC of today. And you would have to rent time on these machines in the middle of the night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, to get on at a reasonable price. And we had our programmer working on this, and he was trying to test this and trying to create a card. The man he was working with was a man named Lee. And we were having all sorts of trouble with Lee's card. And then finally, he was able to get 2 columns of the card right, just missing 1 column. But we knew at that point we were almost there. And the gentleman, his name was Warren Bannerman. I'll never forget him. He was a good friend, a good business. We worked in business with him, and he also was a good friend. And he was the one who actually created the program for the Strat-O-Matic baseball game. Now, the super advanced program, which we referred to before, was done by an individual at our place, Bob Winberry, who's been a tremendous.
He's been a force with us.
He's been a force with us.
He's been a force.
He really has. So we've been very fortunate to have excellent programmers.
And I just think that's a great segue into. I mean, we have an amazing team of people that work for us and with us, and we are really just so lucky with our team. There's a large team of people that make this research happen, that make these products happen, that make all the new initiatives that we're doing happen. And we're just really lucky. It's a great culture at the company. We have a tremendous team right now. We're really proud of them.
You mentioned Leron Lee. I remember him playing for the Dodgers in the early 1970s. And I think he might have gone on to play for in Japan for a little bit as well. We've had a number of people chime in on that question mark on the card. I think perhaps the best answer comes in from someone named Ken. And if I can just pin that down, because it keeps shifting around on me here. I'm trying to find out where Ken's response is. Well, I may have to go back to that. I'll try to find that, but I wanted to go on to another subject, and I wanted to talk specifically about Strat-O-Matic being featured here at the Baseball Hall of Fame. This is a great vintage photo that you guys sent me. This is Hal visiting the hall, early 80s, around 81, 82. And this is when the Hall of Fame first featured Strat-O-Matic in exhibit. Tell us what you remember about that visit that day, Hal.
It was glorious. And not just the weather. It was just was my first visit to the hall, I believe.
Yeah.
And in itself was really amazing to see the hall and to see all the names of the great players that I, had thoughts about all my life, since I was 9 years old. And it was just a glorious place to be. And then to see your product there in the hall, it was like I was a major league player just entered the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
In a sense, it was just terrific.
Our whole family was there.
The kids came.
Really?
Adam, and
my mother,
my sister, my daughter Anne, and my wife Sheila. We were all there.
Yeah.
And I remember going into the hall. They took pictures of the steps, and then they took the picture here inside.
I remember it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
was really something. It was amazing. One of the finest points of my life, I think.
Did you have any inkling as to what the exhibit looked like before you got here?
No, I didn't. The exhibit was. I knew that the game, the fellow from NBC, it was the 1981 World Series game he had. Not the World Series, but the All-Star game that he played in Cleveland, and he drove it to from Cleveland. He drove it to Cooperstown right away the next day, and that's when Cooperstown got it. And of course, it was a large replica of Strat-O-Matic baseball, and it was just really something to see that. I had no idea how it was going to be displayed or anything. It all was done by the hall.
Let me go back to that previous issue because I located it on the chat. Ken wrote, manager has an option to attempt to send runner home from third base based upon the fielder's arm and base runner's run rating. So that is what that question mark has to do with.
And that's
so this was the first time the Hall of Fame featured Strat-O-Matic, but it's also been featured in later exhibits. And currently it is featured in our fantasy baseball exhibit, which is up on the second floor. And it's part of the whole new ball game exhibit. Now, it's not the only game featured in the case. There's lots of other fantasy type games, but you can see that very familiar vintage red and green Strat-O-Matic baseball box, lower left-hand corner. It's right there. Adam, you look at that, you see the game that you're so involved with. You see it currently exhibited here at the Hall of Fame. What does that mean to you?
I mean, my father's work speaks for itself. I mean, he's really, we've always said that Hal Richman at its core, really, he's an artist, and he expressed his art through numbers. And, I think, we are at the height of our popularity right now as a brand, as a company. And, and I think what we saw during COVID and very, very similar to the Baseball Hall of Fame's mission is we saw that Strat-O-Matic connects generations to sports, in particular baseball. And, seeing the game, still in another exhibit at the hall, it's incredibly meaningful. It's incredibly moving. And that box is the classic. We've and actually I should point out that box was designed by my aunt. My father's sister designed all the original artwork for the company. We've just reissued that box for our 60th anniversary, just for this year. And it was not the first Strat-O-Matic baseball box, but it's the one that is the most famous. The first one, which we actually did an exact recreation of for our 50th anniversary 10 years ago, that we called our Founders Edition. Was a white box with a similar artwork, but green ink just on the white. That was really that actually just is really also very iconic. And when we created the Founders Edition, we also recreated everything in the box. So we recreated the original cards, the original game board, even with the little errors that they had on them at the time. But it's wonderful to see that. It really is.
And here is an example of a more recent box. This is a box that houses the game that we have in the education department. It's gotten away from the red, pretty much green, and then lettering is in white and yellow. So this is what it looks like now, although you did mention they have gone back to the vintage box as part of the 60th anniversary celebration. We are getting a ton of questions and comments in on the chat, so I'm going to try to get to as many of those as I can for the balance of our show. We have about 15 minutes to go. First question comes in from Michael. Were other board games an influence on the creation of Strat-O-Matic? And what other baseball simulation games do you feel have been worthy competitors?
Well, the way we usually answer that question is, we think of ourselves as Coca-Cola, and then there's some Shastas and some RCs that every now and then come around. But in terms of games that have been lasting, I think APA was I don't know if they're still producing. They were around for a while. I think their audience has really dwindled, but
the first game of this nature was produced in 1931 by a man who was a baker. His name was Van Beek, and he paid. That was of course a depression, and he put up all the money for the game up front, and unfortunately, the printer printed the product, and then the printer went out of business. And Van Beek did not have enough money to continue going. So that was the first type of game of this, which we can call, I guess, a personalized game, where the players, each player had his abilities were measured by some instrument. In the case of APA, it was also dice, but dice read completely different and a completely different game. And so a man named Seitz was a kid then. He was a young boy, about 13. And he played it through, and then he went to war, and then World War II came about 10 years later, and he came back from the army, and he decided at that point, since Van Beek wasn't doing anything with the product, he took the product as it was. He didn't make any changes that I remember at all. And he came out with that product in 1951, and he was the first. And then that was followed by games from the Midwest, from upper Midwest in Duluth, Minnesota. I forget the name of the company now, but they had about 2 or 3 different products.
There was Status Pro.
That's right. Well,
Status Pro
was another one.
Yeah.
Status Pro was another one.
Sports Illustrated had a game for New York Minute.
They did.
Yeah.
There were other games out there, but even though I'm pro Strat-O-Matic, I must say, being objective, the reason why we were the most successful was we were able to combine play value with realism, the best of all. And no one came close to. Some of them might have been more realistic. Some of them might have had some more play value, but none had the combination that we had. And that's why we still remain of that whole group, we're really the only ones left. APA's barely holding on. And there's another game too, I forget, it has a computer product also, Pursue the Pennant, which he did basically emulate our product a bit, simulated it, but he's still around. Yeah,
part of it also is, about 6 years ago, we just have this for baseball, but eventually we'll be doing this for all of our sports. Our company has always been retrospective in that we come out with the perfect data set after the season ends. But about 6 years ago, we introduced a new product called Baseball Daily, Strat-O-Matic Baseball Daily. And what that essentially is a daily downloadable data feed where we are current in season with the actual season of baseball so that people can play current games. And I think, again, we have kept our products current. We've kept our eye current in terms of where the market is heading. And that speaks to the success of the company and where we are today.
This next question kind of dovetails off that. It's from James Reddy. Question for either Hal and or Adam. I began playing Strat-O-Matic in 1967. My oldest son is 40. He has played since 1989. Wow. However, my younger 2 boys, 29 and 35, they did not show much long-term interest in Strat-O-Matic, although they did play for a while. How have the preference changes associated with generations influencing your long-term strategy?
It's first of all, that's a great question. James, thank you so much, first of all, for being such a long-term customer, and really appreciate the question. I think our strategy really shifted in the pandemic. And what we saw, and I mentioned this earlier, was a tremendous amount of intergenerational play. And the best way for us to market Strat-O-Matic is through our existing community. So they're the best zealots for the game, and we have so much multi-generational play. Absolutely, it doesn't always work. You know, sometimes people want more of a visual experience. You know, and our as most people on this Zoom will know, you know, we are on. We have a robust Windows platform. We have a robust online game, a robust app platform, and more digital platforms that are coming that we'll be talking about in next year. But you know, I think that the thing about Strat-O-Matic, and I think this is one of the things my father always prided the company on, and it was really just so right on. You know, there are lots of companies out there doing amazing graphic games, photorealism, and if that's your thing, that's your thing, and that's awesome. That's not who we are. It's not who we've ever said we were. You know, we are all about the statistical accuracy and reliability. So if people want that kind of detail, and the actual, you know, when we talked earlier about the fact that we called Atlanta, we called 7 out of the 10 final teams that moved up this season. You know, if they want realism, that's when you're playing Strat-O-Matic. If you want, you know, the video experience, we're totally supportive of that. It's just not who we are.
Yeah. Would you say that the decision to go online, which has been very successful, do you think that really has made the company today? I mean, it could still exist in other forms, but when you look at the company today, if you didn't have the online presence, do you feel Strat-O-Matic would be significantly less within our popular culture now?
You know, it's a really interesting question, and I think it's a combination. I think where Strat-O-Matic is today is a combination of our various verticals that we're in and the various platforms that we're on. You know, the game, our board games, it's still a robust business line for us. It really is. Our digital platforms are all really robust. But the wonderful thing about our company is that they all feed each other. The version of Strat-O-Matic Baseball on our online version on Strat-O-Matic Baseball 365 is slightly different than, and there it is, there's Strat-O-Matic Baseball 365. Slightly different, not slightly, but actually dramatically different than our Windows platform or what you can get in an app experience. You know, our apps are more very quick slices of Strat-O-Matic. So, you know, what we basically tried to do digitally is appeal to different people in terms of the offerings that we're giving of Strat-O-Matic, and they're all slightly different. Some of them are easier to get into. They're more mass market. Some of them are deeper, like our Windows platform is the deepest digital experience that Strat-O-Matic offers in terms of the level of detail. Our apps are quick, discrete experiences that really appeal to a larger, more mass market base.
Here's an interesting question coming in from Kevin Hill. He wants to know, any chance of partnering with a company like Topps, although they're not really doing baseball cards now, but at least in the past they've done them, any chance of partnering with Topps to show players baseball card images when playing the computer game? For example, 1990 Eric Davis Topps card would show up on the screen when you're playing with the 1990 Cincinnati Reds?
So it's a great question, and I think you know, the way that our Windows platform is designed, for example, you know, we do not, as many fantasy and simulations companies function, you know, we do not have rights for team names, for logos, but our players can input whatever photos or whatever logos they'd like. That's the way that our software is designed. Because we are not an MLB licensee or an NFL licensee, NBA, NHL, you know, we do not provide that kind of imagery, and the majority of our people in our peer group don't do that either. But the way our game is structured, which I think is pretty great, and people do this all the time, is that you can input this imagery yourself into the game if you'd like to. But you know, you bring up a company like Topps. I mean, we have tremendous respect for a company like Topps and their history. You know, we are constantly talking to, and have had over our history, partnerships with the different companies, and will have more coming in spaces that we're already in, and in new spaces that have really started to develop over the last couple of years in the sports industry.
Question for Hal comes in from Mark. Not counting the first couple of years, was there ever a lean year or season where you considered going out of business or just skipping a season?
Well, the moment of truth came when the baseball union became very active in soliciting businesses to pay royalties, and we had no idea what Marvin Miller was going to do that night. In those 2 or 3 days that followed after the meeting with him, he could have put us out of business because we were a very small company. We had no idea what size they were, but we assumed they were, with all the players, rather large, although they were not that, at that point, they weren't that big, but they were still in a position to put us out of business. And so that was the moment of truth, that particular period. But thanks to Miller, we were allowed to continue. And we've had problems before with the associations and after, but we were able to retain our relationships, and eventually Major League Baseball took over from the Players Association, representing the players, and they allowed us to continue doing what we're doing. We don't have, as Adam said, we don't have the rights to the uniforms or the nicknames, or the decals or anything like that, but statistics and names of the players, which are in the public domain, we are allowed to use. And there was a case that was decided several years ago, which went to the Supreme Court on that issue, whether the names and the names and the names of the players and statistics were in the public domain or not. And the court refused to review the case, which meant that the verdict of the prior court, lower court, was accepted, which says that the companies like Strat-O-Matic may use these names and not have to pay. And that made a major difference, because that was a lot of money we were giving the unions, and of course it came off the top, and it made the games more expensive. So
question comes in from Larry. Once we are through the COVID pandemic, will there be a large event to celebrate Strat-O-Matic's 60th anniversary, similar to what was done for the 50th anniversary?
That's a great question. So yes, we had planned a huge Strat-O-Con for the 60th anniversary, but we make plans and the world, the universe laughs, especially during a pandemic. We certainly hope to do that. And, we have so many initiatives we're working on right now, but it's definitely something when it's safe to gather, we really hope that we have the opportunity to gather. We're not there yet, but hopefully the world is moving in the right direction.
Final question that we have time for, and we apologize to all the others that chimed in. We'd have to do about a 6-hour show to get them all in, but this is a good question coming in from Stuart. Do Hal and Adam get feedback, disappointment or praise from Strat-O-Matic players that have differing opinions about defensive ratings?
Absolutely.
Oh yes. Well, you have to tell the Doug Glanville story.
Without a doubt. Well, there are a couple of Doug Glanville stories.
Yeah, we love Doug Glanville. Let's just start by saying that.
Doug Glanville, came up,
great guy.
and he was a very fine fielder. He's a University of Pennsylvania graduate, a very bright guy. And when he came up his first year, we rated him a 1 in left field, and we had never really done that before. We thought he was really a center fielder playing left field, and he wrote us a letter thanking us for the rating and all. And then several years later, as Doug got older, we finally reduced his rating in center field to 2, which is still a very good rating. And Doug was very upset about this. And so someone arranged a meeting with Doug and myself at the Mets at Shea Stadium. And we met on the field, and Doug brought a bevy of statistics proving that he was a 1 fielder still. But I withheld my ground and continued to say he was a 2. And eventually we shook hands, and he gave me a baseball bat. The other story that Glanville tells us is a terrific story. He's playing center field for the Phillies, and I forget who the second baseman was, but he was moved into left field for the first time. And Strat-O-Matic, not too many years ago, created a rating 5. A rating 5, 4 was considered very poor. 5 was considered you were a problem out there. And this fellow was rated a 5 because he had never played before, and he was an infielder. And some of the fans in the Philly ballpark were Strat-O-Matic players. And they started yelling at this fellow, "You're a 5, you're a 5." And he had no idea what they were talking about. But Glanville did. And he was laughing in his glove, hearing the fact that they were calling this fellow a 5 in left field.
That's great. Despite the polite complaints from Doug Glanville, he has generally praised your product. You've gotten endorsements, unofficial endorsements from Keith Hernandez, Kurt Schilling, Bob Costas, among announcers. So you hear directly from these people. They tell you what they think.
Yes, we do. I mean, we hear not only directly from the players. I mean, we hear directly from the general Strat-O-Matic community at large. Like, we get a lot of feedback. Yeah. And I think when whether it's the player or the consumer, I think when you're passionate about something, and people are so passionate about Strat-O-Matic, they really like to get involved. They like to give their feedback. They like to give their praise, and they like to give their criticism. And we listen to it all. And we're appreciative of it all. And we're really lucky to have a very passionate, sticky community. So
they also contribute a lot to the changes in the products each year by writing in suggestions. And we keep Bob Winberry's in charge of that, and he keeps records of each sport of what's coming in, what people are saying. And then at the end of the year, he usually makes some changes in all our products. And it comes from this list created from what the people have sent to us.
We should mention to our viewers that the game is available for sale through our online catalog, our online store. If you go to shop.baseballhall.org, again, shop.baseballhall.org, go to the search, and all you have to do is put in the word Strat. You don't even have to go Strat-O-Matic. Just put in Strat. It'll take you to the game. I believe we have a Hall of Fame version of the game as well. So you can purchase those right at our website. Again, shop.baseballhall.org, and then just put the word Strat into the search, and it'll take you right there. Our thanks go out to both Hal and Adam Richman for joining us today. We'll have to do this again because there's a lot of areas that we just didn't have time to cover. We had so many questions coming in, easily the highest number of questions coming into our Zoom group chat, and that is a good problem to have. Of course, I do want to thank as well the Ford Motor Company for being our very generous sponsor. Hal and Adam Richman, gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today. It's been terrific. Thank you.
Bruce, thank you so much. And just want to thank everyone that came today. We do this because we love it, and we love the hall. So, just thank you, Bruce.
Well, we'd like to think we have a lot of fans as the Hall of Fame, but it's obvious that Strat-O-Matic has a ton of fans out there, and their online presence is very much evident today. Thank you again, Hal and Adam. Keep in touch, please.
Very well.
Thanks, Bruce. Be well.
Bye now.
You too. Virtual Voices of the Game with Hal and Adam Richman of Strat-O-Matic. We hope you've enjoyed the program. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.